Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group, I'm your host. We want to thank our sponsor today, San Antonio Handweavers Guild. They have been so generous with their sponsorship and we're so excited to have them here today for this episode of Textiles and Tea. As always, remember you put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your comments in the chat, but I can't always see them, but I know I'll see the questions in the Q&A. I am so excited to have Molly Elkind here today. Not only is Molly an incredible weaver, she's also a friend of mine. And so we're excited to have her here today. So after focusing on weaving for 14 years, Molly's recent work explores weaving with paper and mixed media. Since 2018, she's been inspired by New Mexico's high desert landscape, which is rugged and fragile and beautiful, but also vulnerable to wildfires and drought. Molly earned an MA in studio art from the Hite Art Institute at the University of Louisville in 2002. The exhibition highlights include 2 solo exhibits here in Atlanta, numerous juried and invitational shows nationwide. She's been published in a number of fiber art-related publications, and her work is in several collections. Besides making art, Molly is passionate about teaching it, with a particular focus on design principles and processes. She is based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where she teaches both online and in person for guilds and conferences. You probably saw her at Convergence. Hi, Molly.
Hi, Kathy. So glad to be here.
So welcome.
Thanks. Thanks. And thank you to the Guild, San Antonio Guild, for sponsoring this program, and to all the sponsors who've made possible this wonderful series.
I'm sure they're tickled pink to get to be able to sponsor you. So my first question is very important. What is your favorite tea?
I am drinking ginger tea these days a lot. Yeah.
Where'd you get that mug? That's cool.
That was made, I'm so glad you asked. It's made by my neighbor, Maggie Byler. Artists are thick on the ground here in Santa Fe, and she is a very talented potter.
I was wondering, do you have to like apply to live there and show your work before you're let inside the city limits? It's like
not really.
Everybody is an artist there. No wonder you moved there.
Yeah.
So if you would talk about how you got started in fiber, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, I was always one of those crafty kids, always trying to make something out of pipe cleaners and old spools. And I was in 4-H as a kid, but our 4-H club was not about raising animals or livestock. It was about home ec skills. So we learned to sew and crochet and do laundry, if you can believe it. That was an actual project. But I still enjoy crocheting. But more importantly, even than 4-H, of course, was my parents, who were both makers. My dad is a woodworker and made fine furniture. My mom liked to sew clothing, and she also had a crafty side. So from an early age, I think I was taught to appreciate good craftsmanship.
Oh, that's wonderful. 4-H. Well, I haven't heard of a 4-H for years. That's wonderful.
And heart, health, head.
Yeah, because all I did in 4-H was draw. I didn't raise anything. I just drew. I did drawings.
That's good too.
I know. So talking about how you got started, you have an interesting path to where you are today. And I love that because one, I think it lets other people know you don't have to have a direct line. You know, all these people say, well, I'm such and such age and I've never studied art and I'm too old. That's not true. You can go a very roundabout way to get where you are because you have a BA and an MA in literature, right? Then you went back and got an MA in fine arts, right?
Right.
So what was the catalyst? What happened that one day you said, I need art?
Good question. Actually, I'm one of those people who thought, oh, it's too late. I'm in my mid-30s. You know, I'm too old to switch careers. Honestly, I was teaching English and I just got tired of wielding the red pen. I got tired of correcting essays and finding mistakes and being critical, and I wanted to be more creative. I also wanted to work with more tangible materials than words. something I could feel in my hands. So, and for me, the gateway really was, this is the through line to 4-H. Good Housekeeping magazine had an article about Amish quilts. And I saw this Amish quilt and it's just stopped me dead. And I was like, oh, that is the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. I wonder if I could make such a thing. I think I know, I still remember how to sew fabric together, and so that set me off. And I also had 2 kids at home, and it just seemed like a nice project that was just for me that I could do during nap times and stuff like that.
Well, that's just an interesting path. But I'm also curious, did you find that your studies in literature and all your experience in literature, did it impact on your artwork later on?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you can't take the English major out of the artist. So in a couple different ways. I learned in literature classes that realism, depicting the world as it looks to us most of the time, is just one style. And it's not necessarily even the best style always or the most advanced. And that was kind of a game changer for me to realize that we didn't all need to be striving to draw like Leonardo or Michelangelo or somebody. But more positively, I also began to realize that my own impatience with learning to draw has to do with the fact that my mind likes to work in a slightly different way. I like to think in terms of symbols, metaphors, comparisons, juxtapositions, a collage kind of mentality that's a little bit less direct maybe. And I'm going to sound like an English major again. I'm not good at narrative. I'm not great at telling stories. But like Emily Dickinson, I want to tell the truth, but I want to tell it slant. So that's what I'm always trying to do in my work. Tell it slant.
Yeah, if somebody said, describe Molly, I would never said she, doesn't do a narrative very well. I think that's not how I perceive you. That's interesting. That how you perceive yourself.
I love to read stories, but I'm not good at making them up.
Well, speaking of narrative, this first work we're going to look at is called Mother Mary, and it's the theme for the work. So why did you focus on this image?
How long do we have, Kathy?
I was going to say, this is going to be good. Go ahead.
Well, a large part of it is autobiographical. So this just turned into a series that probably lasted 4 or 5 years. And at the beginning of that series, I had just recently, within the last year or two, lost my mother. And the other piece of the autobiography is that my real name is Mary. So when I was a child in Sunday school, I would always pay special attention to those stories that mentioned Mary, because I thought they were talking to me, that I was supposed to be taking a hint here about how to be in the world. I was definitely picking up that message that Mary was a model for girls and women. And the model at that time was, to be meek and submissive and obedient, and your highest calling is as a mother. And my mom, kind of that was her feeling too. She really found tremendous satisfaction in being a mother. But I also could tell, and this was in the 70s and 80s when I started growing up more, and this is during the feminist wave of our lifetimes, when opportunities were expanding for women. And I also could tell sometimes that I think she chafed against that a little bit. She was a little bit bored, a little stifled maybe. And I knew that it wasn't going to be the whole story for me. So that's what that whole piece on the left, which is called Mary, the Anxiety of Influence, is about. The blue figure is the mythic, legendary figure of Mary in the background, looming over both of us. The black and white image is actually a version of my mother's high school graduation photo. And then that's me down at the bottom. So kind of a chain of influence there. And then the piece on the right. So I did this sort of deep dive into all the traditions and the artwork that had been made around Mary for, how many hundreds, thousands of years, really. And one of the ways that Mary's been depicted in painting is called the Mater Dolorosa, Latin for the sorrowing mother. And so the piece on the right was my version of sort of standing in solidarity with all the mothers today who are grieving their dead sons, their dead children, who are, victims of gun violence or of war. Right. So it was a deep subject, and there were lots of different ways to come at Mary.
I know this is a detail, but I have to ask,
Yeah.
why blue?
Well, if you look at paintings of Mary, she's always wearing blue. And there's all kinds of symbolism associated with that. She's called the Queen of Heaven, the Queen of the Sea. She's associated with the sky and the stars and all of that. And blue is a color that traditionally, symbolizes fidelity and faithfulness. And I mean, it goes on and on.
This is one of those I want to sit with you and go, and why did you do this? And what does this mean? But we only have an hour, so I'll keep going. This next piece is called Skygrass, and it's so beautifully delicate. That just amazed me, because tapestry is not really known in my eyes for delicate. So would you just talk about this piece, how it came about?
Sure. You're right. Tapestry normally makes a very sturdy, packed, weft-faced fabric. But after we moved here, and where we live is an extremely windy environment, and we always feel when we're out walking in the landscape that the wind is almost always blowing, and so that's the feeling I wanted this to have. This piece was inspired by the hikes that Sam and I did during the pandemic, where in this really dark and scary time, we were going out every morning when the sun was low and it was shining on all these grasses, and the sky was this brilliant blue and the wind was blowing, and it felt great. It felt joyful, and it was also very grounding. And so that's kind of the emotional context for this piece. And then the little triangles I kind of stole from Sylvia Hayden. I saw a picture in a book of her open weave triangles, and I thought this is the perfect way to get air to literally flow through this tapestry. So that was a really fun experiment. I wove it from one of the short sides so that the warps would be going across horizontally in those little triangles. And that also made the curved grass shapes a little easier to weave.
Well, once again, I wish I could see it in person. I feel really stupid. I didn't realize those were open.
Yeah, that's a white wall behind it. So yeah, it's kind of hard to read it that way.
Well, it really changes it. It's like, I want to see it in person.
Yeah. Thanks.
You recently have changed your focus from tapestry with fiber tapestry, and that you're weaving some with paper. And this next piece is called Two Western Tanager.
Tanagers, yeah.
Tanagers. It's a bird, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Talk about changing to this material?
Okay. Yeah, so about a year ago in December, my right shoulder suddenly decided it did not want to weave tapestry anymore. It could not beat the weft into place over and over as we have to do in tapestry. I got tendonitis and whatever. So I had to stop. I had to rest and step back and think about, okay, now what? If I'm not a tapestry weaver, who am I? What do I do? It was an existential crisis. So I sort of cast about. I read a lot of art catalogs and did some reading, and I took a watercolor class at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, which is my absolute favorite landscape in the world. And I thought, well, this will be something fun and different, and it'll just cheer me up just to be up there. But I spent the whole week trying to paint watercolor landscapes, and just just thinking, oh, this is so sad. I can't do this. And I'm not a painter, I'm a weaver. So I started slicing up the landscapes and weaving them together, because there's a show at the end of the week and everybody shows their work, and all the people who are there for different art classes, look. And I just thought, I cannot put these landscapes up in public. So I'm going to cut them up and weave them together, and then nobody will know what to think. But more seriously, though, it was very exciting, because what happens when the weave structure interacts with the image started to look really interesting to me. It disrupts it, it interacts with it. Sometimes it can reinforce it. And you get this sort of interplay like we see here with the pattern and the image, and kind of in this kind of delicate balance or flickering, coming and going kind of way. And I thought that was super fascinating. So that set me off on this new direction.
I love it because it makes you look.
Huh.
This is not a piece you're going to just walk by and go, oh yeah, bird. You're going to go, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
Oh, and I love that. I want a work that that pulls me in for whatever reason.
Well, that's what I'm always going for. I want you to stop and look and really think about, well, why did she do this? This is crazy. Why didn't she just paint the birds, and be done with it?
Take those scissors away from her. My gosh.
Right. Right.
Oh, you stated that paper weaving, I love this. I had to think about this when I read this. You stated that paper weaving shortens the feedback loop. And I think I know what you mean by this, but would you talk some about that?
Sure. I have to credit Sam, my husband, with that idea of the feedback loop, because he switched a few years ago from darkroom photography to digital, and it really meant that he could move through the images he taught so much quicker. And so the same thing is true here. Tapestry, as we all know, is a slow medium. And I always feel like I've got like so many ideas brewing that I want to try, and I'm really impatient about, getting to these ideas, these little samples and weird little experiments I like to do. I feel like they're sort of like planes stacked up on the runway, and they're all delayed. And and I want to get those planes off the runway. And so the cool thing about paper weaving is it's faster. And so I can get the planes into the air, so to speak. And even though you do have to kind of pick up each row one at a time with a pickup stick, that part of it's slower. But then the rows are like a 1/4 inch wide. So you can make a woven surface pretty fast. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I'm doing, like I did, I'm seeing questions, just a little bit of the questions in the chat. In that tanagers piece, one thing that does slow it down is sometimes I'll weave the pattern. That's what I did here. Weave, like in this case, it was a diamond twill. And then I'll paint the birds on it. And then I will unweave it and keep those wefts in order. And then I rewove it, same diamond twill pattern, but offset by 1 pick. And so that's why you get this kind of weird double diamond image. And so it means that all of the paint isn't going to show. Sometimes you're just going to see blank white, paper. So that effect is something that I'm pretty excited about right now.
Yeah, that was Lynn's question.
Yeah.
Which comes first, the weaving or the
right.
painting?
And sometimes the painting comes first,
Yeah.
and I weave. It just depends. Yeah.
This next picture is your interpretation of the songs from the black-headed grosbeak. Grosbeak?
Grosbeak. Yeah.
Right. Don't want to insult the birds here. So you moved to New Mexico in 2018, which I never forgave you for. You left me. And you have a new surroundings, and they've increased your awareness, the environment. And that, I'm assuming, really impacted on your work, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much determined what I'm interested in doing, for the past 6 years. It's either a response to my immediate, high desert environment, or kind of some of the larger environmental questions that this environment and all of our environments are embedded in right now. I mean, on the one hand, I love the beauty of this landscape, the big skies and the tiny little details of seed pods and birds and whatever. But I became especially aware of this a couple of years ago here. We had a wildfire that was pretty serious in New Mexico, and it wasn't that far away from us. It was about an hour away by car. But it pretty seriously freaked me out. And so I started researching the threat of wildfire in this kind of landscape. And I found out that we live, as something like 60% of Americans now live in the WUI, which is the wildland urban interface. And that's where, just as it sounds, human neighborhoods and habitation butt up against forests and grasslands and things that can dry out and be prone to fire. So long story short, so I'm trying to figure out this is my big dilemma right now, how to find the right tone or the right approach between the beauty that we still see in our landscape, the birds, the sky, the grass, the wildflowers, all of that is some of it's still there. It's not all gone. On the other hand, we're facing this tremendous danger that it is going to someday be gone, or so altered that it will be unrecognizable. And so can I do both of those things at once? Can I hold that paradox between joy and grief in the same piece, or even in the same series? I don't know. I mean, if I focus on the beauty and joy, am I glossing over the scary parts?
Oh,
But nobody, I don't want to make work that just kind of shakes my finger at people and tells them, you should be worried about this and you should be doing this and that about the climate crisis, because I am one of those people. I'm as guilty as anyone living the lifestyle I do. And so I don't have the answer. I mean, I think we know what some of the answers are. But the answer I'm looking for now is, how do I live with this paradox of joy and grief? So if anybody has any suggestions on that, I am all ears.
well, talk some about the work itself. I'm curious how you put on paper what you heard.
Right. So there's this amazing app called Merlin. Bird lovers know it. And you can, when you hear a bird out in the world, you can turn it on. It automatically records the bird's song, and it tells you what bird it is. Because it is so fun. And many times you can't see the bird, you can just hear it. And so, and it records it, and then you can play that back later. And so what I did in these cases was I would play the recording back, and I had my watercolor paper and my brush loaded up, and I would just paint these kind of gestural, you probably can't see my cursor, those weird kind of zigzaggy gestural marks on the paper. I would paint those in response to what I was hearing, trying to make some kind of human interpretation of the song. And then interweave it into whatever twill pattern I was weaving.
So do you work outside, or do you bring it back in and do the work?
I bring it back in. It's, again, windy.
Windy. As you're painting.
Yeah. I don't want that much wind in my work.
Oh, that's great. Well, I gotta get that app. I mean,
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, there's times when it's like, oh, what is that? And I want to know. And then there's those times of, what is that? I want to know that too. And it's Merlin, like Merlin.
Exactly. It's through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's a free app.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah.
Oh, we've already got people saying they love the app. So
yeah. Great for new birders like me.
So this next piece is four bluebirds. The colors are just beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So how has color changed since you've gone from fiber to paper?
Well, that's a great question. Well, I'm not blending color anymore on the bobbin with yarn. I'm learning how to blend color with watercolor paint. So that's a whole different learning curve for me. So that technical part of it is different. The color palette, though, I've noticed that for several years now, ever since I did the Skygrass series, my palette has pretty much stayed the same. It's blue, it's gold and yellow, and and green, and it's the colors of the landscape around me, brown and more brown and white. So that part's the same. And I've actually experimented, speaking of brown, with making earth pigment watercolors recently by going out and digging up some of our different colors of dirt and processing them into paint. And so far I have several shades of brown, but it'll allow me to get the land literally into the piece, which I kind of like the idea of.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, we've already got a question about selvages, so let's talk about selvages, okay? We were in class together. We both went down that path of, oh, my selvages, oh, my selvages. So as a floor weaver, if you're weaving on on any kind of loom, especially if you're a beginning weaver, there's just like this obsession with the selvages have to be good. You are judged by your selvages. There's a place in hell for people who have bad selvages. There's all that emphasis. And then these works, you've kind of let go of that about the even edges. And so did you find that changing the material you were able to let go of some of that restrictions and focus more on something else that was important for you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, with paper weaving, a lot of those rules just fall by the wayside because it's a different, even though it is a woven structure, it's a different material. And first of all, you're not limited by the number of shafts on your loom. You could have 51 shafts. It just depends on how you number those warp strips. You can lift up those warps any way you want, in any combination. And so the selvages is another thing like that, where you don't have to have straight edges. And I actually like it because for me, it's more visually interesting. It's more active to have an irregular shape than a static kind of very stable rectangular shape. I mean, why does it have to be a rectangle? So that's one answer. And then also I had actually been playing with this idea of irregular edges and shapes in my tapestry for a while, layering pieces over each other to create things that looked like collages where you had bits of paper sort of sticking out on the edges and so on. Yeah. So I'd like to see us, it's important to learn those technical skills. I mean, absolutely. You want to be able to do them when you need them, when you want them. But then I also feel like we should be willing to let them go if that's what the situation calls for, or if that's what the feeling of the piece calls for.
I'm reading this. Somebody, Anne Marie Mullen, is talking about a movie called A Real Pain that touches on these emotions.
Cool. All right.
Anne Marie, we want
wait
to
to read all these comments. I can't see them.
This next piece, it's called Dawn Chorus 2.
Right.
And the colors again are they're amazing. Your use of color is just so delicate. And with this piece, I love the energy and the movement. Look at the energy in this piece. Oh my gosh, it just moves.
Yeah, well.
So talk some about the piece, and then I want you to talk some about, talk about the piece first, and then there's a second question.
Sure. This might be anticipating your question, I don't know, but so when I first started this paper weaving stuff, I had a stash of painted papers already that were just great to be able to just slice those up into strips and start playing with. And so a lot of this paper, like in this one, was stuff I already had, sort of gestural studies that I did when I was working on the Skygrass series. And I was trying to get this feeling of spontaneity and swoopy, windy energy. So those paper, it was more like going back to the quilt idea of, well, what's in my stash and what can I do with it? How can I put these different things together? But I think that sense of movement that you're seeing, and I didn't really plan this or wasn't even able to predict it at the time, is the twill pattern going across that pulls it all together, but it also has tremendous energy, that zigzag line. So I really, and then of course the dawn chorus, the birders know what that is. It's when when all the birds, especially in the springtime, are singing their hearts out in the morning. And it's just this wonderful cacophony of song.
Yeah, I could just, it's one of these, there's so much going on. And somebody just said, it looks windy.
Exactly. That's that
Exactly.
brushy stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Good.
So the next part of this question is, how do you design? When you start, do you know exactly what it's going to look like? Do you have it all drawn out? It's ready and you go.
With the paper weaving, not so much. It's more improvisational. I might have colors in mind. I might have an image of a particular bird that I want to use. But it's much more, let's see how I can combine things in a kind of collagey way to get at that feeling or idea. And because it goes so quick, I feel like the stakes are a little bit lower. When I was doing tapestry, and people who've had my tapestry design classes can attest to this, I was pretty rigid about, okay, you must have sketches, and then you must do samples, and then you must do a cartoon, and then you must revise your cartoon, and then you can sit down to paint, or I mean to weave, because the time investment of weaving is so big that you don't want to have to, at least the way I like to work. And I know there are people who don't mind unweaving, and for them, that's their improvisational process, and that's very cool. I'm not like that. I can't do that. It makes me nuts to keep unweaving. I want to know when I'm sitting down to weave a tapestry that I'm on the right track because I've studied it to death. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I'm always amazed how on that continuum of, like you said, the planning and the spontaneity, everybody can be anywhere on it. Or
Yeah.
depending on what they're doing, they move around on that continuum.
Yes, yes. And one of the ideas I like a lot is something that Tommy Scanlon, one of my very first teachers, said years ago, was that for her, there's a hot phase of design and a cold phase. And the hot phase is where you're just going crazy with color and gestures and just getting ideas down on paper, and you're not really being critical about it or anything like that. And then the cold phase is where you stand back and you're like, all right, what's good here? What's working? What's not working? And you're more analytical. And I think they're both important. We need to have both of them.
Tommy's on here, by the way.
Oh,
Hi, Tommy. One of the biggest debates in art, and I have to be careful asking this question. Some people I just don't, because I don't know what they're going to say, is whether you're an artist or a crafts person, a hobbyist,
Tommy.
artist, hobbyist.
Right.
So where do you see yourself?
Oh, that is such a minefield of a question,
It
Kat.
is, it's huge.
No, it is. And so I'm a little like, did you have to ask me that? But I have waded into these waters before rather recklessly. So I'm going to try to do a better job this time. Just like the distinction between art and craft, I think it's a false binary. I don't think they're two ends of a spectrum and you're either one or you're the other. For example, many of us who now would say, yes, I'm a professional artist, started as hobbyists. And then it took hold of us and took over our lives. For me, when I started art school, the expectation was that that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to be artists. We wanted to show and sell our work, and they were there to show us how to start doing that. And that became my goal for myself. I started just wanting to be able to make better quilts without like spending the rest of my life figuring out the basics about color and design and so forth. I wanted a quicker path than crashing around on my own. And so that became my goal. That said, I know many hobbyists who are as passionate and informed and skilled and serious about what they're doing as anybody who has been to school for it, certainly, or who would call themselves an artist. I know it's a hard word to take on for yourself. It takes time to say, I'm an artist, because it sounds like you're going like, aren't I great? And I always want to point out, it's not an evaluative term.
Mm.
I think anybody who's works with, you got me on a soapbox here, did you notice? Anybody who works with artistic materials or artistic ideas and who's considering questions of color and balance and design and composition, you're an artist whether you want to claim that title or not. So yeah, so as somebody says, Polly says, hi, Polly, it's like saying you're a writer. Yeah. So for
Well,
me,
I love it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay, go ahead. No,
No, I have never heard it put that. Maybe I've just never listened and heard it, but that it's not an evaluation.
exactly. I mean,
I've always thought of it as an evaluation. That, man, that's kind of like ding.
yeah, everybody says, well, I'm no Picasso. Well, most of us are not. You know, it doesn't mean that by being an artist, you have to be like at that supersonic level. We are all somewhere on that spectrum. For me, what makes something art rather, and I really don't want to go there because I don't really think there's a true sustainable distinction between art and craft either. But for me, something is more artistic when it's pushing against the boundaries and assumptions of its medium. It's questioning. Why does this have to be a rectangle? Why do the selvages have to be straight? Why, not just repeating what you've been handed down in terms of your craft and its traditions, which is a great way to start. And we all need to start there. We all need to know what the traditions and techniques of our craft are. But then the art part for me is moving a little farther and saying, but what if, what if? And I see some comments going by about, the label craft is a kind of snobbery from the high art world of painting and sculpture and so forth. And it's also been a way to, frankly, to denigrate anything that women make. It's a sexist thing historically in large extent. So yeah, read The Subversive Stitch on that one. Okay.
I know when I was in art school, they wanted to wash your mouth out with soap if you said anything about craft.
See, that's it. That's the old idea of there's a hierarchy and this sharp division. And we don't even see that that's holding anymore on any side of the divide. Fine artists are using craft materials. Craft artists are making fine art with their materials. So, I mean, I don't even think it's a valid distinction anymore. The lines are all blurred.
So what's next for you?
Well, I am easing up a little bit on my teaching schedule after several years of going full strength at it, which I love. I love teaching. So it's hard for me to do this. But I also, when I'm honest with myself, I know that I can use preparing for classes as a way to procrastinate doing my studio work. Wow. Be perfectly honest. So I really want to push this studio work as hard and as far as I can for a while and see where I can take it. I have another project that I'm thinking of working on this year that I'm not ready to talk about yet. So if it comes to fruition, everybody will know about it, but not yet. But it's funny, I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was thinking, here I am working with paper again, which is where I started 30 years ago in the program at U of L. I walked in to the fiber art department, and I want to tell this story.
Please do.
Yeah. And I was a quilter, and I had been told by other fiber artists in my quilt guild that they had a really good program there and I should go check it out. And I could take just one class, And so, and I thought, great, I can learn some things that'll sort of give me a shortcut to make me better quilts, because I want to design my own quilts. And so I took my first quilt that I designed that was based on a photograph I took it in and I showed it to Lyda Gordon, the professor. And she was very kind. She said nice things. She asked some questions. And then she said, do you ever use non-commercial fabric? And I was like, what is non-commercial fabric? I didn't know what she was talking about. I mean, doesn't all fabric come from the fabric store? And I think I said, what do you mean? And that was the beginning of learning to think sort of outside the box that I'd been given about this is how quilts are made. You start with yardage that you buy from a store and you cut it up according to a traditional pattern, and then you sew it back together. And so I learned to dye and to stencil and stamp and embroider and all those great surface design things that that we all are, somewhat familiar with now. So anyway, I forget where I was going with this. Anyway, so now, but anyway, so I said, I was thinking I want to make better quilts when I went in. And Lida's like, nope. I just got all this great new great new paper making equipment. You're going to make paper. And I was like, and she goes, you were an English teacher, an English major. You love books and words and all that. It's a perfect fit. And Lida was a force. There was no saying no to her. Those of you in Louisville know what I'm talking about. And so I was like, okay. And it was a great thing because it got me way out of my comfort zone, and it taught me all sorts of things about, ultimately about like sculpture, and three-dimensional and textured kinds of stuff. So yeah, so here I am back doing paper again, figuring out what I can do with that.
Everything's a circle.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've set an all-time record for the most questions. So y'all, we're not getting to them all today, but we're going to get to them as many as we can. People are having inquiring minds. Hopefully some of these we've already answered. So,
Okay.
The piece with the open triangles, right?
Yeah.
Somebody want to know, was that piece woven, like we showed it this way? Was it woven that way or was it woven this way?
It was woven from the side, so from the short edge.
Andy, you are so good.
Across, yeah. Because look at the way that those are the warp threads that you see in those triangles. Normally those would go up and down, but they're going sideways.
All right. Way to go, Chandra. Good question. Thank you. They want to know how the triangles are secured. Do you use sumac?
Magic. I am not using sumac or double half hitches or anything like that because I didn't like the way it looked.
Yeah.
And the way the edges are stepped, it just all holds in place. And they're not big. They're maybe 1.25 inches high and then maybe 1.25 inches wide. So everything just stays in place. And it hanging from with the warp going sideways also helps with that. It's not sagging. If that makes sense.
I'm going to combine a bunch of these together because they're a bunch of how-tos.
Okay.
Mostly about how do you stabilize it. First of all, how do you stabilize the top so you can do the weaving?
On the open triangles or
no, I'm sorry, we're talking about paper now. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. Oh, yeah, good question. Tape. So I use artist tape that's taped down to a piece of foam core so that the sticky side is up. And then I tape the warp strips down to that. And that holds it in place and allows me to use like a bamboo skewer or a long metal kebab skewer as my pickup stick to lift up the strips.
How do you secure it once you're done?
Tape.
There we go.
More tape. Actually, that's not
save the wolf tape.
Entirely true. I did use tape in our dry environment. The adhesive eventually stops working. So I'm going to need to start gluing down all the edges to keep things from slipping and sliding around, which is tedious, but necessary.
Liz Adams, who has a wealth of knowledge. She's been throwing in all sorts of comments today. Thank you, Liz. But she wants to know what kind of paper. That's a good question. What kind of paper do you like?
Great question. I've been playing with different kinds of paper. The watercolor paper is 100% cotton, acid-free, and it's usually heavier than regular paper. I think for me, heavier, like 140 pounds is kind of the sweet spot. 90 pounds, it's per, I forget what the measurement is, but it's always on the box or the pad of paper that you buy, what the weight of it is. Something heavier than the paper that you would put through your printer. It's easier to weave with, it holds up better.
We have tons of questions about how do you secure it. Everybody wanted to know about that.
That's funny.
I
Yeah.
know.
I do offer a class in paper weaving.
There you go. There you
Yeah. So yeah.
go. Sorry, we keep same thing, adhesive. Um, oh, Robin wants to know, do you finish the paper weavings to protect them from the environment? Do you ever seal it?
No, I put them behind glass or plexi in a frame.
Okay.
And so that kind of does the job.
Oh dear. Margaret Shea wants to know, what was the name of the book? Did we
The-
discuss a book?
Um,
Okay, she will come back. Margaret, come back. I don't remember talking about a book.
I don't either. Emily Dickinson wrote a bunch of poems, and that was what I quoted. That's the only. Oh, Subversive Stitch. Leslie came up with it. Yes,
Oh, okay.
Subversive Stitch. Excellent book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Subversive Stitch.
Mhm.
And what does that talk about?
It talks about the history of fiber art and its reception as being done by women. And it's, it's all the things we were talking about before about how it's categorized as craft and therefore lesser, and done by women and therefore lesser, and so on. Those, but it's full of examples, and it takes you through some of the 20th century and before 20th century history of that. It's been around for a while, so it might be a little bit dated by now, but I still think it's a great read.
All right. And she put it in the chat, so it's in there. All right, great. Somebody wants to know, do you use a shredder to cut your paper?
I tried that once. If you are cutting a solid color sheet of paper and it doesn't matter whether all the strips stay in order, then go for it. Use the shredder. But I'm usually cutting a piece of paper that has some kind of image or pattern on it that I want to keep in order for the weaving. And so it doesn't do that. So I have to cut one strip at a time. I have two different rotary trimmer paper cutters. One of them is kind of an office size, 12 or 15 inches. And then I bought this really beautiful German one that's like 28 inches long, so I can use big paper. Pasta cutter, somebody asked. I have not tried that. Again, try it and see what happens.
Somebody wants to know, what do you mount your final product on?
I put it on acid-free mat board.
Okay.
And again, I use artist tape and a kind of a mounting system that Sam taught me for photographs that he uses.
Her husband's an amazing photographer. Oh, somebody wants to know, what is the piece behind you?
I was hoping somebody would ask. Sorry, we can't get closer to it. That is a Rhea rug, and it was made by Sam's grandmother, who was a Finnish weaver, and she made it in the 1960s. And so by pure accident, I married into a family of weavers, which was so cool.
Can you give us a lot of people probably don't know what a Rhea rug is. Can you?
Oh, okay. So a raya or Rhea knot is a particular kind of knot that goes around two warp threads, and the ends of the knot hang on the front. And so it's like a shag rug. It's got a lot of texture to it. It's pronounced Rhea, Raya. My mother-in-law taught me to say Ryu, which is the Finnish pronunciation, sort of. Yeah, so that's what it is. It creates great texture, but it's an incredibly slow technique. And so a row of Rhea knots or Raya knots is then followed by a row of plain weave, and then a row of knots, and so on.
Kind of shaggy, right?
Very shaggy. Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. Somebody gave us the name of the author of that book, so I've just put that in there. Somebody's trying to sell her book.
Spelled it. She
Heather,
spelled it.
get out of here.
Thank you.
They want to know if you'll return to wool tapestries.
Oh, I look at tapestries on Instagram that people are doing, and Like, oh, because it still speaks to me. I love that surface, that woven surface, and I love what's possible with it. But at the same time, I'm going, oh, my shoulder's going, no. So I don't know. I just have to see how it goes with the shoulder. Yeah.
All right, here's a great question. I hadn't thought of this. I'm glad somebody's asking that. This is from Anna Arts, and she
Okay.
wants to know, have you ever collaborated with your husband by taking one of his photographs, cutting it up and weaving it?
I've thought about it. We haven't discussed it in any serious way, but we do get a lot of when we participate in our local studio tour, people come through and they're like, do you guys talk to each other about what you're doing? And we're like, well, yeah, like constantly. We're hiking the same hikes, we're looking at the same things, and we're often kind of on the same page in general about our approach. Like Sam's work right now is not rectangular. And it's sort of collagey. So anyway, but we haven't actually talked about a true collaboration yet. Who knows?
Going back through there to make sure I got them all. Karen LeBlanc wants to know if you'll talk more about your layering technique. How do you develop them? How do you develop?
The layers of the paper weaving. That's a good question. I'm really kind of feeling my way right now. It was starting with, sometimes I'll start with 2 blank pieces of paper and weave white on white and then paint on that and then unweave and reweave. Sometimes I'll start with a warp. Usually this is what I do. I'll start with a warp that's made of different kinds of colored paper, or sometimes slices from a photograph that are kind of collaged together to make a warp in the way that you would make like a striped warp for a piece of fabric. And then I'll lay, by weaving in different wefts, whether they're the same or different from the warp, you create those layers of imagery. And then you can paint on top of that if you want. And I hope that answers the question.
Mary Flad wants to know, how do you ever combine paper and yarn?
I have done a little bit of that, and I want to continue to play with that. Oops, excuse me. My earphone came out. Yeah, I think linen yarn will work really well with paper because to me, they just sort of belong together. They have that same kind of dry texture, crisp texture. I'm not sure about wool so much.
Bhakti Zeke was the one that gave us the name of the author. Thank you, Bhakti.
Thanks. Hi, Bhakti.
I love it that we have alumni on here.
Oh, I know. So cool. Well, you have a lot of alumni.
All right. This is from Margie. I like the married generational and wondered what the image on a grandchild would be since they benefited from our generation.
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
It is.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't go there. So that's for someone else to do.
There you go. Have you ever thought about this from Sherry Davis? Have you ever thought about incorporating bird call audio waves into your weavings?
That's a good question, Sherry. I love the way you think. At one point, I thought about putting QR codes on the labels so that people could call up a recording of the bird song. And I haven't really taken that and run with it yet. But I like the thought of that. I have done a little bit of experimenting with weaving the spectrogram, which it looks sort of like a graph. If you use Merlin, you've seen them. It's a graph of the bird song. And
wow.
Yeah, if you know how to read them, you can sort of hear it. It's like sort of like reading music, hear it in your head. So I've woven that, and that makes a really cool kind of graphic pattern, kind of like a barcode almost, visually.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's something to play with for sure.
So there's going to be so much more stuff coming from Molly. All these things she's going to do.
Yeah, let's hope.
Well, I can't believe it, but we have to quit for the day.
Oh, this has been so much fun. You're just
and everybody,
so
you can just tell everybody has enjoyed this so much, including me.
I'm so honored. Thank you to everyone who came. I'm just beyond thrilled with it. Thanks.
It's so good to see you. I miss you here.
I miss you guys too.
All right.
Come
If you
to
want to
Santa
see,
Fe.
if you want to see more about Molly, go to her website, mollyelkind.com, and you can see more of her work and see about her online classes and whatever else she's up to. And we're all going to keep an eye on her and see all this new stuff that's coming down the pike. So thank you, Molly. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Next, we want to thank our sponsor, San Antonio Handweavers Guild. Again, thank you guys so much for all your sponsorships that you have done for Textiles and Tea. It makes this program happen. So if you would like to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your guild, your business, a group of friends that want to go together and sponsor somebody, let us know. You can go online to wespendie.org and you can purchase your sponsorship there. If you have questions, call the office. We'll be glad to talk with you about it. So thank you all so much for sponsoring an episode of Textiles and Tea. We've got some big events coming up we're so excited about. First one is the Jurors Talk. They are every Thursday at 2 p.m. We've got 2 more happening, three more, yardage, basketry, and small expressions. So if you didn't get to see the exhibits when you were at Convergence, or you didn't get to go to Convergence and you want to see the artwork, there's no better way to see an exhibit than with the juror. There's so much insight into why they chose what they chose, what they were looking for. It just really opens up a new aspect of the work, and I encourage you to participate and experience that. And if you're thinking about joining and then submitting something to an exhibit, it's great to hear how a juror thinks and what they're looking for. So I encourage you guys to check these out. 3 more on Thursdays at 2. You can go online and purchase a ticket, and there's a discount if you are a member. So it's wespendie.org. You can go on there and purchase a ticket to the Jurors Talks. We got another big event coming up on the 25th. Saturday, the 25th, the Guild Development Retreat. And if you've talked to anybody who's been to this, a lot of people really liked this event. It's a chance for guilds to come together and share experiences and information. We will have panelists. We bring in experts to talk about whether it's insurance, or this time we're going to have teachers come in and talk about what they like about how guilds should set up workshops to make them more effective. Some great topics. And then there's also the opportunity just to talk to other guild members of how did you handle this, or what are you doing about that? What's been your experience? It's a great day. It's all online. It's one day, and you can pick and choose what you want to participate in. Now, remember, if you're an affiliate guild, you get 4 free passes to go. You can have 4 people from your guild to go to the guild retreat on Saturday. If you aren't in a guild, or there's more people that want to go, for $25, you can do the 1-day guild retreat. Again, go online, wespendie.org, and you can purchase your ticket there. We want to thank everybody for supporting HGA through donations and memberships. Your donations pay for things like the guild retreat, Textiles and Tea, all of these events. And they also give us the opportunity to, what's the next thing? What else do guild members need? What else can we help to preserve the fiber craft or artistry? Depends on how you look at it. And that's how we do that, is through your support financially. So thank you so much for those of you who have joined and donated. If you would like to donate, or you would like to join wespendie.org, you can give us a call if you have any questions. So thank you guys so much. If you've missed any of the episodes, if you want to watch this one again, you can by going to the HGA Facebook page, or you can go to YouTube. Now, if you like watching on YouTube better, be sure you sign up, because if you subscribe, you'll get a notice that a new episode's been uploaded. Usually it takes us a week or so to get an episode up. If you want to watch it right away, you can watch it on the HGA Facebook page. Next week, we have Hope Wang, and we're very excited to have her here. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Take care, and happy tea.